Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to learn a little bit more about LogPoint SOAR and how we can help increase SOC efficiency through automation. Before I get started, I just want to get some practical details out of the way. This webinar is being recorded and it will be sent out after. So don't worry about taking too many notes because you'll be able to reference the presentation later. And we are holding 4 webinars about LogPoint SOAR to address different target audiences and different time zones. So for today's webinar, it is targeted at our partners, but if you're not a partner, don't worry, there's still a lot of great information and relevant information for you. So don't feel like you need to leave, everyone's welcome. Okay, so with those practical information out of the way, welcome to today's webinar about how to increase SOC efficiency with automatic incident detection and response. Talking to you today is me, Martha. I am the head of product marketing here at LogPoint, and I also have one of our newest colleagues, Duran, who's VP of Global Services. And I head up the marketing team, and really my main goal is making sure that all of our internal teams and our customers and our partners understand what our products do and the value of our products. And Duran here with me today is the founder of SecBI, and he's not only our expert on SOAR and XDR, but he'll also head up a new division at LogPoint doing some really cool things. So stay tuned to learn a little bit more about that. So looking through the agenda today, we'll make sure that we're all on the same page about what SOAR is. And then we'll move on to LogPoint SOAR specifically. And we'll talk about capabilities, benefits, how it works, and Duran will even show us a demo. We'll also have a chat about some common use cases for SOAR, where we'll open up the stage and ask your opinion. So I hope today some of you are willing to speak up and talk with us about use cases. And finally, we'll save some time to answer any questions that you have. But throughout the session, I will be keeping an eye on the chat. So please send your questions via the chat as soon as you have them. And if anything interesting pops up, I'll just interrupt Duran and get them answered right away. So ask away. But before we move into SOAR, I just want to talk a little bit about LogPoint because there might be some of you who are unfamiliar with us or maybe don't know everything about LogPoint. So at our core, LogPoint is all about using innovation to accelerate incident detection and response. We started out by consulting organizations on security and then made the move to build our own SIEM solution. And from there, we added on machine learning and analytics capabilities, including developing our own UEBA solution to detect user behavior anomalies. And not only do we innovate our own product here at LogPoint, but we also believe it's important to incorporate innovation from other leading vendors. So we have dedicated teams that build integrations with tech, like threat intelligence platforms, to ensure our customers have a complete solution with LogPoint. And last year, we also extended the reach of LogPoint by making it possible to secure the business critical SAP environment. And all of our capabilities are built to work in a security operations center of any size. And we've worked with various managed service providers to develop our solution so it scales. We really want to make it easy for our partners to efficiently manage and respond to their customers' cybersecurity needs. And of course, the focus of this session is on our latest innovation, LogPoint SOAR. You might have heard that we recently acquired a universal XDR company, SecBI, and well, now we're ready to really add native SOAR capabilities to LogPoint, so our customers and partners can speed up threat detection and response. So what does it mean now that we here at LogPoint have SOAR? Let's first start with the definition. So SOAR is another acronym, our industry loves them, and it stands for Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. Essentially, a SOAR has 2 main functions. It gathers security data and alerts from a bunch of different sources together in one place. Then SOAR prioritizes all that information to help drive a standard incident response according to a standard workflow. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I typically find definitions to be a little dry and not really saying much. So let me see if I can illustrate the value of SOAR and what it is with an example. So let's say there's an analyst who has a rule set up so that every time a user fails to log in 5 times, he gets an alert. When the analyst gets that alert, what does he do next? How does he know if this alert is the result of an attack like password spray or just a neglectful colleague who forgot their password? The analyst can't answer these questions automatically with a SIEM. He would need to manually investigate and see what else is happening to make a decision. And he might spend time investigating and turns out that it was an employee who forgot their password. Or even worse, the analyst might ignore the alert, thinking it's not important and miss an ongoing attack. But thankfully, all of that changes with SOAR. SOAR gathers all of the corresponding data, events, and incidents automatically to help analysts make decisions. Additionally, in addition to that failed login alert, the SOAR will automatically show the analyst that failed login and the other failed logins across users. As part of the SOAR's investigation, it will tell the analyst that if it's a possible password spray or brute force attack, and give the playbook for how to deal with that specific issue. And if it's not an issue, let's say it was a user who changed their password, but one of the systems they use is automatically trying to log in with the old password again and again. The SOAR will recognize it's a false positive and deal with the issue automatically. In essence, a SOAR eliminates a lot of the manual work of analysts trying to piece together information. And like I just described, SOAR gathers all of the corresponding data, events, and incidents automatically to help analysts make decisions. It doesn't take the decision away from the analysts. It just gives them that additional information so they can make the best decision. And you can really consider that with a SOAR, there are 4 main aspects that help in the threat detection and remediation process. So starting with workflow and collaboration. Security operations workflows contain many steps that are performed by several individuals, and the steps required to complete a task are often not documented, existing only as tribal knowledge within the organization. And this can really limit some tasks because only certain team members may know what to do. But with the SOAR allowing the team to work together through these standardized workflows, it eliminates that tribal knowledge and puts all of that knowledge into the SOAR itself. And using a case management engine inside SOAR helps limit the number of disparate tools teams are using and helps ensure that attackers can't get insight into how security teams are investigating attackers simply by reading an open ticket about the activities. And when it comes to orchestration, that's the SOAR's ability to manage or control other technologies through defined connectors. Animation is scripted actions that the SOAR takes as defined in a playbook. So essentially, the number and depth of integrations SOAR supports helps determine how much value the SOAR will add to security operations. A SOAR simply can't orchestrate a response if it can't access, for example, the endpoint it needs to shut down something. And finally, threat intelligence. Most SOAR playbooks use threat intelligence to add additional information to incidents to determine which automation actions to take to remediate the threat. Automating by adding threat intel is a key benefit to helping teams investigate incidents more quickly and more accurately. So after that very brief intro to SOAR in general, I hope we're all on the same page. What does it really mean for LogPoint now, adding SIEM to SOAR? What's the value? I have the pleasure of handing you over.
1 second, Martha, sorry. We have a question by Chitra. She would like to ask. Chitra? You want to unmute yourself? Okay, sorry, Martha, go on.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say, Duran, that I think now is the time that I can hand it over to you so you can talk more specifically about LogPoint SOAR and also take us through a product demo.
Perfect, thank you. So adding SOAR to a SIEM means that we can enjoy both worlds. The world of a SIEM that for the past 15 years had already built many of these possible integrations of the different security controls that fit every organization today already, on one hand. On the other hand, a SOAR platform that can then take and connect all of those security controls together and manage the communication, orchestrate the communication between the security controls themselves, the analyst on the other hand, building the right response, managing workflows, and so on. Basically, everything that Martha had just showed us. Before we can actually look at how it is all done and maybe even go over a live demonstration, let's take a real example. One of the main use cases that we usually see within organizations is how do I detect, investigate, and respond to a phishing attack? So phishing is with us for the past 5, 7, 10 years. And although people thought already 5 years ago that the problem of phishing is already behind us, apparently it's not. About 37% of all attacks within organizations are phishing. And not only that, even more interesting is the fact that 80% of the successful attacks against organizations have started through phishing. So if we can automate just part of what a phishing investigation actually does within every organization, we can automate a lot of the effort that is wasted or invested today within the same organizations to understand whether this is real phishing, how to react to it, and so on. So let's look at an organization that have not yet implemented a SOAR platform within their security control platform. And we can see that it has a SIEM. SIEM have already collected data from all the different security controls. Either the SIEM had some kind of detection that it detected a possible phishing, or it is connected to some mail gateway that has alerted of a possible phishing attack. Either way, we now have an incident of a potential phishing email. What does the analyst do? So first of all, it will take a lot of time until the analyst will actually notice the alert itself. We know that he has thousands of them, of alerts every single day. There is a shortage of analysts, so most of those he or she will not even notice. Once he does pick up the relevant phishing incident, he will start with his or her manual investigation. So he will try to understand who sent the email. Is it internal or external? If it is external, what do I know about this domain? When was this domain registered? Whether this domain within any of my threat intelligence sources has already been notified as a possible phishing attacker. Try to gather additional context about the email itself, extract all headers, trying to understand from this header whether this is phishing, maybe it is also spam on top of it. Whether I can extract some URLs from the body of the email itself. Are there attachments? If there is an attachment, I will try and take the hash, try and try and correlate that hash with other security controls within the organization. A lot of different questions that I'm asking myself as an analyst, just to understand whether this is indeed phishing or not and how to respond to it correctly. Now, if I do have a SOAR platform, all of these steps that I've just mentioned, I can basically write as a playbook, write as a workflow, and possibly most of them even automate. Some of them I may want to consult with the analyst, especially before I email IT or before I purge all other emails. Yes, I will stop there and ask the analyst, hey, do you want really to delete all of these emails of these users within the system? Yes, great, no, I will stop. So now that I have this workflow, I can automate it as part of my SOAR platform. And then once my SIEM got that detection done, it will automatically transfer that incident to the SOAR platform, who will automatically run all of those investigation points that will also run the response if possible. And therefore you have this happy smiling face at the end of the process. And by that, we're saving hours of investigation of analysts that we are missing anyhow, and we can, instead of hours of just gathering data, slicing and dicing, contextualizing, calling for additional data, bringing additional data from threat intelligence, again, slicing and dicing, correlating, and so on. just so that I can make a decision as an analyst. What do I think about it? I can automate all of that. It says you 10 minutes, but in reality, if the playbook doesn't stop, it will actually take a few seconds, couple of minutes for me to look at a case management to understand what had actually happened and how I want to respond to it, and that's it. So obviously the benefits are I can become much more effective. I can be guided by a ready process. So if I'm not an expert on phishing, but maybe there is another analyst that has that kind of expertise. He's the one that built this playbook, this workflow, and I can now follow his steps. It means that I'm not missing any other steps. I don't have the concern of, have I forgotten something? Have I forgotten checking in a threat intelligence source, one of many that I'm using, whether this is indeed phishing or not? Have I forgotten to open a ticket, to inform management when there are more than 5 such incidents, and so on? Now I don't need to try and remember all of that. It's all documented within my SOAR platform. So I can make also better decisions. I can make more guided decisions based on all of these processes, and I can trust my response, which means that the effectiveness of my responses grows within my security operations center as part of the whole team. By the way, running a SOAR platform also means that I can now compare between how different analysts acting as part of a certain process, how each of them is choosing within those specific steps where they do need to choose how they want to react. I can now gather those kind of statistics and see how long it takes different analysts from mean time to detect, mean time to respond, making the right decisions, and so on. So I can develop different analysts in different areas where they require that kind of development, part of making my SOC more efficient. So speaking of SOC efficiencies, let's talk about some. Before that, I see that we have some questions. Q&A. Okay, we'll touch pricing later. Roadmap to support other SIEM solutions. So we were supporting other SIEM solutions, but the moment that SecBI was grabbed through an acquisition by LogPoint, we are fully integrated into the LogPoint SIEM, which means that we can communicate with any other security controls, including other SIEM solutions in there. But you do need to have a SIEM by LogPoint as part of the SOAR implementation by itself. So let's talk about some of the SOC challenges that is driving this trend of adding automation, adding orchestration as part of our SOCs. So we see that there's an overload of events and alerts within every security operation center. We see that those overload means that analysts don't necessarily know the prioritization, what to deal with first. They just choose those that are easiest to deal with from their perspective, according to their knowledge and experience, and leaving others as part of the unhandled queue. By adding automation, we can actually solve that. We'll talk about that in a second. Staff and knowledge shortage. We know that there are many organizations that are looking to recruit more and more security analysts, and those are scarce. Not only that, security analysts with experience, with knowledge of investigating and hunting and running incident response teams and so on is even more scarce, which means that you're missing a lot of important knowledge and experience as part of the organization. Some MSSPs are able to gather 1 or 2 such experienced ones on top of the other 5, 10, 20, and I've even seen MSSPs with over 100 different security analysts, most of which are brand new, coming out of university with maybe 1 year of experience investigating cyber threats. So we have this knowledge that we need to deal with. Many of the attacks today require long and complex manual processes, hunting, and very deep knowledge. There are too many point solutions, so it's really important to try and keep up with all the different point solutions that an organization has. Some organizations have only 3, 4, 5, but most organizations that we see have more than 10. And I've even been at the Security Operations Center with over 130 different point solutions, some of which are homegrown, some of which have been built specifically for a specific vertical, and an MSSP that deals with a specific vertical needed to build some security controls, even around OT, in order to help their customers. So the need to be able to understand and orchestrate is extremely important here. And then there are complex and targeted attacks. We see more and more targeted attacks against organizations. We talked about phishing, but there's also spear phishing, where you're targeting specific people within the organizations. Hackers are applying machine learning as part of their attacks in order to learn how the genuine user is actually acting, and then they're mimicking them. So UEBA solutions and anomaly detections become less and less effective in those cases, and you actually need to take those solutions and correlate them with others in order to really understand the full scope of an attack. So through that, we're basically introducing the LogPoint SOAR to solve all of these challenges.
Hey, Duran, can I interrupt you for a second? And can you tell us a little bit? I can see on your slide here, you're going to be talking about playbooks. Could you tell us a little bit more about playbooks, such as who's writing the playbooks for LogPoint SOAR?
Of course, thank you. So let me just answer on these on the challenges themselves, and then we'll talk about how we're developing the playbooks as well. So as part of, so in order to solve all of these challenges, you need to introduce the ability for playbooks, the development of those playbooks, in order to really pass the knowledge from the more experienced analyst in the organization, the less experienced one. And then you can also automate through workflows, and by that clean many of the false positives or many of the incidents that are sitting unhandled within your SIEM through workflows and automation. So speaking about who's writing these playbooks, there are several personas that can write a playbook. A playbook can be written, and some of them are coming out of the box through LogPoint. So we already have many different use cases and playbooks implemented as part of the system. We did make sure that as part of the development process, we are developing them in a way that it doesn't matter what kind of security controls you have in place. So we are differentiating between the playbook itself, the process that you want to investigate or respond to something on one hand. On the other hand, you have the actions of the communication with the different security controls. So we talked about having too many point solutions. That requires an orchestration, a communication between the different security controls in the organization. If I want to get additional information from the firewall, I can do that automatically without having to re-ingest logs or something of that sort, using API with the firewall itself. So having the ability to then differentiate between the playbook and the orchestration layer or the actions means that we can then migrate these playbooks from one customer to another, from one partner to another, or even more importantly, within the same MSSP, you can write one playbook, one process for all of your customers. What will change? The actual action. So if for one customer of yours, they're running Checkpoint as a firewall, and another customer is actually running FortiGate, it's the action that will change, not the fact that as part of the playbook, I want to block or add an IP to the firewall itself. That will stay the same. So, so on one hand, there is the playbooks that come out of the box with the LogPoint SOAR solution. On the other hand, there are the partners themselves. MDRs, MSSPs that know their customers that might have different processes. You can either take our existing playbooks and make changes to them, or you can build your own brand new playbooks according to your existing processes. These usually are security, but they don't even have to be only around security. So, for example, if you want to check whether a certain user is now abroad, you can actually connect to a travel system that you have within the organization or to the HR system to check some additional details about a specific user and through that make a decision either about a security incident or something else. And last but not least, if your customers themselves or you are a customer and you want to build your own playbook because you have some unique process that was not dealt with, or you have some kind of uniqueness according to a certain vertical or according to a certain business process that you have, you can obviously document that, build your own playbook, and build your own automation around it. Did I answer the question? Yes.
Yeah, and I think talking about building your own playbooks, do you happen to know what programming languages we support to do that, to write our own playbooks?
Yes, so you can include basically Python scripts as part of the playbooks themselves. And the playbook themselves, you don't even need to know any programming language. I will show that as part of the demo. It is drag and drops of business of different blocks for operation, for decision points, and for running other playbooks. So you can run nested playbooks. And it's as simple as possible. You don't need to be a developer for that. Any other questions, Martha, before I move on?
Yeah, there's a couple more about playbooks specifically. Someone's wondering if we can test our playbooks using sample data.
We can test the playbook. The sample data needs to be loaded then obviously to the SIEM, and that is a possibility. So as long as we have access to the sample data, yes.
And when we're talking about specifically from a partner perspective with multi-tenancy and MSSP compatibility, can all the workflows and playbooks be written on a per customer base?
Yes, the playbook can be written per customer or for all of your customers altogether. Playbooks can be exported and imported, or you can just run them across all of your tenants and get the results into one centralized point. It basically depends how what is the specific configuration for your MSSP.
And then I know that we're going to be switching over to use cases here. So as part of that discussion, someone's wondering how many built-in use cases we have that are supported by LogPoint SIEM and SOAR. So maybe you can weave that answer into your next topic.
Indeed. And speaking of use cases, so first of all, sharing is caring. We are in the process of still building a unified solution of SecBI that was recently acquired by LogPoint into the LogPoint SIEM. And as part of that, we are adding more and more use cases. We are adding more and more support for the different actions out there and so on. So what I would like is that instead of you guys asking me what kind of use cases we have, which I will show in a second on the demo, if you have some unique use cases, or if you would like to share with the whole group, what are the most common use cases that all of your customers are looking for, I'll be more than happy to comment specifically on those, and or if we do not have them, work with you to make sure that they are supported out of the box in the future, assuming that those are of an interest for the rest of the organization. Anyone care to share? And you can raise your hand on the chat, and then we'll open your ability to ask question, or you can write it on the Q&A. And in the meanwhile, what would you say is the time frame and difficulty on migrating an already implemented SIEM plus EDR to LogPoint? So while others decide whether they want to share or not, I will answer this one. So the difficulty is mainly around building the integration for the EDR. Most EDRs are already supported out of the box, so I don't really see a problem with that. So you can just start ingesting data. The main difficulty I would actually say is around SOAR, and that is understanding whether you have already defined processes. So if you have defined processes for how you do investigations today within your security operations center, then this is fairly simple. I mean, it takes a couple of hours to write a certain playbook and add another use case. The harder thing here is to decide what is the right process within your organization. So as long as that part is done and complete, and you have a SOC, and the SOC can be just one person. I mean, Martha did mention before that SIEM plus SOAR can now fit any size organization, and this is seriously so. So if in the past, up until 6 weeks ago, most SOAR vendors that you've seen out there were mainly targeting large organizations, and many of the smaller mid-size enterprises were unable to afford it, either because of money, but mainly because of processes, because of the difficulty in adding those use cases, playbooks, and so on. Now it became significantly simpler by combining this SecBI SOAR with LogPoint SIEM, basically bringing a lot of these capabilities out of the box. So it's easy for you now to document the process. Again, assuming that you have such a process, assuming that you know what it is that you want to do internally, and then it's just a matter of documenting it as part of the platform and running the automated platform for it.
And Doron, I can see too that we have a question. We're being asked to elaborate a little bit more if the SOAR is already integrated with SIEM, and if so, is it from a certain version or add-on module? And I know we'll go into this a little bit later, but me being the product marketing person, I would like to say, let's not say it's an integration, it's a part of the SIEM. And I don't know if you want to add a little bit more details on that, Doron, but that's a very important point I think we should get across.
Sure. Thank you for the question and for the answer, for the correction, Martha. It is not an integration because we don't have a specific API or two servers that needs to communicate between themselves. As part of version 7.0 that is coming out in December, the SIEM and SOAR will be deployed as one single platform on one single server running together with very tight communication between the detections and the correlations that are running as part of the SIEM and the orchestration and automation that is done as part of the SOAR. This will actually be one component out of your existing SIEM platform, which is why, back to the question that we were asked before, you cannot deploy just the LogPoint SOAR without the LogPoint SIEM. It comes together. And whether it is already integrated, so it is already deployed with several customers. It is not GA'd yet. It will be GA'd in December. Okay, so let's talk a bit about use cases. Since you're not sharing, I guess I will need to share. So some of the most common use cases that we see today within our customers are anything from alert and triaging. So getting a SIEM alert and how do I handle it? How do I enrich it? How do I get additional information from threat intelligence? How do I correlate between this single alert that I just got, let's say from a failed login that Martha just mentioned, and checking the same information within my Active Directory, within my Office 365, whether there is also failed login there, getting additional information about the user, when did he maybe started working within the organization. If he's new, then it makes sense that he's forgetting. When was the last time that he changed his password? Maybe he just forgot the new one. Or is it something that happens a lot of times, and then maybe this is indeed a brute force, and then I'd like to understand which of the servers is now running this kind of attack and getting additional information from there. Automating simple alerts such as failed login, I just mentioned that, and obviously enriching any other alerts in order to foster triage within my SIEM, basically getting 80% of the incidents or events that were triggered as part of my SIEM detection out of my queue, so that my analyst can actually concentrate on the 20%. And to be more realistic, it's on the 5% of alerts that really require their attention. Then there is the phishing response, the instant response, whether it's how do I respond to phishing based on all the information that I've now gathered and understood, running consistent and collaborative instant response across multiple tools. This is very important for MSSPs as well. Probably the main use case that we see within MSSPs. The fact that if one of your customers have been you found the beginning of an attack, maybe malware that just triggered, deployed, but haven't yet reached beyond the command and control communication. If you can already stop at that point of time the same malware within all of your other customers, that means that everyone are getting much higher value from the same investigation that you've just ran for just one of your customers. So collaborating between your customers without sharing the data itself is an important use case for MSSPs. And obviously case enrichment, getting helping analysts to get to a faster resolution. Threat intelligence, this is where you can actually get a higher ROI for the investments that you've made on your threat intelligence. We would gather all of the information from all the different threat intelligences, both those that are paid and the free ones, and be able to correlate between that data and all the different sources that you're running for all of your customers, which means that we can get to a faster correlation process, as well as understand which of the threat intelligence actually provides you value. And it might be that for some customers, you will see, and if you have customers in Russia, they need a different threat intelligence source than customers in Belgium, than customers in the US, not to mention customers in China. And if you are a global provider, you will have threat intelligence sources for all of those different areas. And maybe you can just subcontract those threat intelligence to some of your customers and not to others. And by that, save a few bucks on threat intelligence. And when I say a few bucks, I know that these are hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. Running malware analysis for multiple sources, extracting files, running them on sandboxes, getting the results automatically, and then deploying those results again across your whole environment. I see that many questions, Marta. Should I stop here or move to the demo?
We have quite a few questions. Some are about licensing, so I think we'll take that after the demo. We have a slide about it. But we also have something about part of the use case. I'm just going to read the question out to you, Doron. Sure. It says, part of the use case is to have an audit trail of incident response automation steps taken. Are these stored in the SOAR layer, or can it be passed to the incident ticket? So essentially, is there any native integration with ticketing systems? If so, can you let us know which ones? And if there's an API for such a system integration as well?
Sure. So the integration is done via API. I will start from the end. We are already working with quite a few. Snow by ServiceNow, Jira, and some others. There is also a case management as part of the LogPoint SIEM and SOAR itself, and there are quite a few others, as well as via REST API, we can basically add an integration with any other that is required, and it is part of the service. It takes us less than a day or so to add yet another integration. So if you do have something that we don't support yet, great, let's add it to the list.
And Duran, does SOAR have HA functionality?
Yes, it needs to be managed by your IT, but it can connect basically to different high availability systems.
And then someone else is asking if we've published the additional server resources needed to support SOAR, because there's a concern that running multiple playbooks may require additional compute power, memory, et cetera, on top of the SIEM. Could you maybe talk a little bit about what we've seen from the customers we've already deployed this with?
Yes, so absolutely right. And we are actually working now on a calculator tool that will actually help you calculate how many concurrent playbooks you're able to run based on the different resources that you are running. I think that what's also important here to take into consideration is that although right now this is an on-prem solution, but as of January, this is actually going to also be running in the cloud, which means that you will be able to ramp up resources quite fast when you are at peak time, when you have more playbooks that you are running, and maybe less when it is a quiet time for you. So that calculator will be available as part of the resources that we are publishing with the version closer to December.
Great. And there's one question really quickly, practically about the slides. I can just say that I'll work with the team to make sure that a deck is put up in the partner portal on our the LogPoint partner area. So don't worry, I'll put something up there. But with that, the rest is, I think, related to licensing. So let's move on with the demo, Dran.
Thank you. I'm also looking at time, and we don't have that much of it. So you share. Okay, so I kind of skipped the dashboard, and what I want to show you mainly is what the case looks like and what the playbook looks like. Why is that? Because these are the most important parts of when you are deploying a new SOAR system, whether on existing SIEM or with a new SIEM, and that also relates to the ticketing system, the ticketing system that was asked before. Basically, everything that you can see here is accessible via REST API. So we are communicating internally within our system using REST API as well. So all of this can also be migrated easily into any other ticketing system that you already have within the organization. We're not coming in and asking you to change everything. On the contrary, I expect you to have existing processes within your SOC, and I want to be integrated into those processes. And the only difference is I'm going to automate many of the repeated processes, manual processes that you're doing today, and by that already provide you value. Afterwards, if you want to add additional capabilities, additional automation, and so on, you can do that. So just to kind of close on the example that Martha gave you before about the Fed login. So here's an example of what it would look like after running a playbook for a possible Fed login that actually became a possible password spray. Why? So first of all, we got an incident from the SIEM itself about a possible password spray, and you can get access basically to data itself coming from the SIEM. We can then query for all those failed logins, and you have access to the query language itself of the SIEM, and you can add, and anything else that you're going to query now will be added as part of the same incident. But what's really important for analysts to see is that we have found 100 failed logins of 12 users in the past 30 minutes. This kind of hints us that this indeed is password spray. And we may want to understand who are the users themselves that have felt this. It is important for me as an analyst because I then maybe want to see whether they had successful logins afterwards, what else they have done, whether there was some suspicious communication before, during, or after the period of this specific incident, and so on. Where all of these failed logins were initiated from, what machine, IP, and so on. So this is kind of an example of the investigation that Martha talked about before, and this simplicity is what an analyst is actually looking for with the case management, with a SOAR system, a story that I can easily understand and react to. By the way, there are 3 types of playbooks, and therefore there will be 3 types of stories. There are detection playbooks, investigation, and response playbooks, each of which can call the other one. You can also mix and match, but ideally, this is how you would build your playbooks, and therefore it's easier for an analyst to understand what stage he's at now. So you can see here the investigation timeline. Let's look at the playbook that, again, I kind of talked about before. You can see some of the use cases here, but the one that I want to really concentrate on is the phishing one. Same example that I gave you before on the slide. Now let's talk about what a phishing email looks like. So first of all, and you've asked before, kind of how many playbooks or use cases we come out of the box with. So I can count, I guess, hundreds of different playbooks, but in reality, there are just dozens of use cases. Those are the use cases that are really important for an organization to look at, whether it's failed login, and then investigating from there, you can end up with 50 other playbooks, some of which, when I detect that the failed login is a password spray, another one is when it is a brute force, and so on. Same goes to phishing. So there is one playbook for, or one use case for phishing, but in reality, there are like 7 or 8 different playbooks that I'm running as part of this phishing investigation. For example, so I got a trigger from my SIEM about this phishing incident. What I'm then doing is fetching additional information back from the SIEM to see whether it's just one single email, or as part of this incident, there are already dozens of different emails. Usually, by the way, in average, there will be about a dozen different emails as part of the same detection. And then I want to run for each and every one of those emails, understanding whether there are any phishing keywords as part of the headers. So I will extract the headers and run this kind of playbook, going over the phishing attachments and URLs and checking if this is spam mail or not. So let's assume that we had here 20 different emails as part of the same incident. You understand that now I'm actually running 60 different playbooks that otherwise I would have done manually in order to fully understand the scope of this possible phishing attack. Let's look at a couple of these playbooks and see what it actually means. So the spam email is basically extracting all the headers and then checking the DKIM, the SPF, and so on headers, whether there are indications for spamming, and if so, raise the spam score. I can afterwards do something with that spam score, for example, decide of different response strategies and so on. But what's more interesting for you guys would be to look at what if I have an attachment or I have some URLs as part of my phishing attack. So this somewhat more complex playbook is basically talking about 2 different things. If I have an attachment and if I have a URL. So if I have an attachment, I basically want to grab that attachment hash and then run that attachment hash against different threat intelligence sources. For the example, I've actually put here virus total, so it will be obvious what I mean. But in reality, this box will be another playbook that runs the same hash against dozens, if not hundreds, of threat intelligence sources. And if it is found to be malicious, then we're raising the severity of this specific incident. But if I'm raising the severity, what I then also want to check is whether on my endpoint, I can see that kind of hash. And if I can see the hash running on the endpoint itself, maybe it is also running different processes, communication, and so on. I definitely want to raise severity in that case, because it means that someone actually downloaded the file onto the machine. And if so, I then maybe want to scan all other machines within my organization to see if that hash exists there. It might be that they were not victims of the same phishing email, but maybe it's something that was downloaded already 2 weeks ago. But now that I have this new information, I want to scan all of them and then do something about it. On the other hand, I want to extract all URLs from the email itself. I want to check those URLs again against my threat intelligence sources. If I found something, raise severity. And these two processes, by the way, running in parallel. So I'll raise the severity here again. And then if I found a URL that might be malicious, I actually want to see if my user has some kind of communication. Did he actually press on that URL? Did he start some communication from the organization with that URL? So I will check within my firewall, web gateway, and so on. In this case, it is checkpoint. And this, again, is checkpoint for the example, but in reality, this will be a generic action that checks if you have checkpoint, checkpoint. If you have FortiGate, FortiGate. If you have Zscaler, Zscaler, and so on. And if it is found as part of the communication, again, I'm raising severity. But if I've raised severity again, and I found it as part of the communication, I now want to see whether there are any other such emails with these kind of attachments in the organization. And if they are, then maybe I want to purge all of those emails. And there's a script here that can run and do this kind of purging, which, by the way, is a very risky process. So I don't really recommend you to do this automatically as it is demonstrated here. I would actually add here another action of, or actually a decision point, asking the analyst, I am planning to purge all of these emails of these users and so on. Do you approve, etc., etc. So this process that looks much more complex, it was still very important for us to make sure that from a case management perspective, we're still able to tell a simple story for an analyst. And this is the story. Mr. Analyst, we have gotten a trigger. This is the information from the trigger itself that we got from the SIEM. We know when it started, when it ended, and so on. We then found this URL that was grabbed out of the body of the email on VirusTotal, found to be malicious. Therefore, we're raising severity to 80 automatically, obviously. Then we found the same malicious URL also found on my checkpoint firewall logs. I'm raising severity again. I'm sending an email to my IT network. And as you've seen before, I'm purging all of the other mailboxes within the organization. So from this very complex, big process of phishing, it all came down to a simple story, similar to what fed login, simple fed login basically looks like, something that is easy for an analyst to understand what had happened automatically, what do I need to do manually, how the incident started, moved from one employee to another, and how possibly data was exfiltrated if it was, and then how do I respond to this investigation process. I will stop here because we only have 4 minutes and you had several questions about licensing. So let me share the presentation again. So I believe that I've already summarized it as part of the demo, but we are making decisions faster. We're improving the incident response process, and we're saving time and effort of analysts themselves. So what else are we building for our partners? So we basically enable our partners to become more efficient and effective by providing their own SOC services. You will be able to scale across all of your customers by writing playbooks for all of your customers writing basically the same playbooks. Community sharing information and playbooks between all customers that are part of our community, but especially across and between your own customers without sharing the data itself. We are building our own services as part of MDR, predominantly in order to support your new services that you can now also build for new revenue streams, whether it's consulting on how to build the SOC, on the right workflows, on having your own MDR, SOC as a service, monitoring capabilities, and so on. And when you need additional extra support, we'll be able to provide you that kind of support as part of our MDR services, helping your customers implement SIEM and SOAR, and building the right playbooks for them. From certification perspective, so it's going to be the same certification that you've already ran through. We will be adding some additional SOAR information into the same certification, but it is practically the same one. We are adding SOAR as part of the same SIEM license. So from that perspective, you don't need to buy this separately. And the only thing that we will also add is training for the new things around SOAR, such as API, playbooks, automation, and so on. We're building a demo system, will be available also in December, in time for you to demonstrate this for your customers. And you'll have access to that demo system result. The MDR services that I just mentioned, and I guess I have exactly 1 minute to cover this, is going to be anything from monitoring and escalation point for your SOC. So we're not providing SOC tier 1 and tier 2. This is more of a tier 3 or monitoring across complicated playbooks that you would ask us to build with you for your customers. Helping you with faster detection and response, so you can escalate to us, and then we can add those kind of capabilities. It is, again, not a 24/7 SOC as a service. Augmenting your own SOC capabilities, so if you need help, if you need additional extra capabilities or manpower, we'll be able to provide you that. And last but not least, helping you with adding additional workflows and automation for your SOC as a service and your customers. There will be additional services on top of it, things like security assessment, hunting, security automation, red team, and so on, where the purpose of all of those eventually is to lead back into the product with additional automation and orchestration as part of the LogPoint SOAR. We don't really have much time for additional questions. We kind of covered many of the questions so far. That said, if you do have questions, feel free to write them on the chat and we'll contact you back. Or Martha, do we have some kind of Q&A email or something?
Yeah, I think, Duran, before we sign off, there's been a couple questions about for MSSPs, if they can still use LogPoint as a SIEM only for their customers, or if the SOAR function will automatically be shipped as part of it. I think that's an important thing we should just touch on before we sign off.
True. So you can obviously, so the SOAR will be part of the SIEM that will be shipped off with 7.0. That said, you do not have to use that functionality. You don't have to connect them, and you don't have to activate them. You can still keep on just the SIEM functionality as you did before.
Great. Thanks, Duran.
Sure.
Okay, and then with that, what I can say is any questions that we didn't get to today or questions that we haven't answered yet, we have compiled an FAQ that should be up on the partner portal already today. So I will take some of these questions and add them to that, the ones that aren't there. So if you feel like your question wasn't answered, or if you can't remember what we said, please go to the LogPoint partner portal and you can see an FAQ on SOAR there where everything will be available. And then I think with that, Duran, we're out of time. So I think we need to say goodbye.
Perfect. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a continued good day.